Hey guys, Paul here. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about how I feel that deck building in Yu-Gi-Oh has in some ways lost a bit of its identity. And I hope that doesn't come off as like too much of a negative rant. I know people don't always like when I do these, but I do think that I'm going to make some valid points. I want to hear how you guys feel about them. So yeah, I'll just start, I guess, with my anecdote here. I was building the Agent deck recently. It's one that I've been building. It just seems like it's a lot of fun. The Agents got like support in Ghosts from the Past. It was really cool stuff. They get like a Synchro Monster, Master Flare, Hyperion, a couple other new like Hyperion and Sanctuary of the Sky cards and Agent cards, and it's a fun time. The deck is really neat. It's obviously not like a top tier deck, but it's pretty fun and kind of capable. So I've had a good time with it. Great. I'm sure you guys can relate with some deck or another. You just built it because it seems neat. So here's the problem. I was looking into like combo guides and stuff like on YouTube, which you're supposed to do if you want to build a deck. It's always a good practice. But here's where the problem comes in. I'm looking at these combo guides, and basically everything just leads to making something like Baron de Fleur. It's a synchro monster, it's level 10, and agents are good at making level 10 synchro monsters, so people will do these combos and it'll end in Baron de Fleur. And then they'll also make, if you're watching like a Master Duel version, I know this isn't like really legal in TCG, they'll make Vert Anaconda and then turn it into DPE, or Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer. And so usually, even though you're kind of doing the agent stuff, your in-board ends up basically just being a Baron, a DPE, and like maybe one agent monster or something in defense mode, right? And that's like your in-board. And this to me is kind of boring because I don't really want to play a deck that just ends up making like generic boss monsters that any deck makes. I want to make the deck's boss monsters. The thing is, in this case, agents have Master Flare Hyperion, which is a really cool boss monster that works well within the theme of agents, and you can certainly make it as part of your in-board, but oftentimes it's more beneficial to make Baron de Fleur because as a generic synchro monster, it's just kind of more applicable. You get the Omni Negate, you get the pop, it's still like 3,000 attack, it's still big. And it kind of just makes me think like, this is something that I don't really like about modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Is that there are always these generic extra deck boss monsters that oftentimes overshadow the unique boss monsters that a deck itself is supposed to be making, like the themed ones. And many, many, many decks have themed boss monsters that have really cool effects, but just aren't worth making over the generic things. Baron de Fleur is like a recent example, and Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer is like also kind of in that conversation. Maybe not as much now in the TCG. Dragoon was always a big one too, but again, that's not as big of a deal now thanks to Vert being banned. So this problem has been like somewhat mitigated, but there's still plenty of others. So like for instance, Borreload Savage Dragon. A lot of times I'll be building just sort of a rogue fun deck thing, and then when I look up the combos, it's like, oh, you do this and you do this, and you make Borreload Savage, and then it just has its like 3 token or 3 counters and its negate. But it's like, I don't want to make Borreload Savage Dragon. I want to make my deck's own boss monsters if I can. And this even applies to like Xyz-based decks. A lot of Xyz-based decks, if you've been playing Master Duel, you'll see this all the time, end up just making like, what is it, Utopic Draco Future instead of maybe their own cards, like, Zodiac decks and Lyrilusk decks and things like that, just make Utopic Future Dragon or whatever it is, and like that's the guy. And he's, can't be, destroyed by battle and card effects, and he has like a monster negate, and it's really great and fun, but like, if I'm making that, then I'm not making the deck's Xyz monsters. And so here's the counter argument to that I know people are going to say, well, these are the better cards. So that's why, they made them generic so that any deck can use them. So you're supposed to use them. And I guess I understand, where you could be going with like saying that. These are generic extra deck monsters, but sometimes it just feels like it can kind of rob a deck of its identity because I want to, when I'm making an agent deck, I want to make agent and like Hyperion monsters. If I'm making a Dragoonity deck, I want to make the Dragoonity boss monsters. What is it? Ascalon and the other thing. God, I don't remember what it's called. But yeah, like I want to make those. Or if I'm making an Ice Barrier deck, I want to make, those monsters. Basically, I don't want to feel like I have to be funneled into Borreload Savage Dragon, Baron de Fleur, what are other examples? Things like, Apollosa, for instance, or using access code to just end the game. I don't know. Things like that just aren't like as fun for me. So I think that the big problem that Konami's kind of run into is, A, I guess the fact that these monsters exist and are so strong, but the fact that the generic extra deck monsters just outshine themed like extra deck or like in theme boss monsters in some way. So I think that what would be a really nice way to balance this would be to make more cards that are going to be like generic extra deck monsters. A really good example of what I'd like to see is more cards like Herald of the Arclight. So Herald of the Arclight is interesting. It is an Omni-Negate, monster, and it is generic to make, but the catch is that it's very weak. So it's weak, it has like what, 1,000 attack and 1,000 defense, or like 600 attack, 1,000 defense. It's not very big. And also it tributes itself to use its like effect. So unlike a card like, Baron or Borrowed Savage or whatever, card, Utopic Draco Future, something like that, Zeus, is that you can make it, but it will like not really be a huge part of your board. It will leave the field and it'll be gone and kind of removed from the strategy. And I think that maybe more of these generic extra deck monsters that have like lots of negations and protections should have like smaller stats perhaps to compensate for it. So while they're still great to make and they can like help your board be a little more solid, it would be cool if they weren't so, didn't have such stickiness. And that would, I think, maybe be like a really great solution to the problem. And I also think that maybe Konami could do a little bit more archetype locking. I know this isn't like always a popular opinion because some people like the idea of being able to get creative and make lots of different extra deck monsters and like combine different decks into hybrids. But when it all ends up being the same extra deck monsters that get made anyway, then it just kind of robs the deck of its identity. I know a really big example that I see all the time is like there will always be some YouTuber who's got like a new 2022 Blue Eyes deck profile, right? And it'll be fun to sort of see Blue Eyes like as this strong competitor, and it's kind of consistent, it can make cool stuff. But then the end board is like using the Blue Eyes monsters you summoned to just make Hope Harbinger, or whatever, Borload again, Baron again, whatever. Like it just, so it's like you're playing a Blue Eyes deck and you're using Blue Eyes as like the engine, the conduit, but the end board has no Blue Eyes monsters on it. So are you really playing Blue Eyes? And I guess this just gets subjective. I guess, there are going to be people who don't really mind. Like, they still consider that playing Blue Eyes because, yeah, well, at least I made the Blue Eyes as part of the combo. Sure, they're not on the field now, but, like, they were there, so I can still say I'm playing Blue Eyes. For me personally, that's not really, like, playing Blue Eyes, in my opinion. So, does my opinion matter that much? No, not really. I mean, Konami's not consulting me about any of these things, so it's not like I really have a say in it, and it's not going to change. But it's just something that I do wonder, do other people maybe feel this way about it as well? Like, how do you guys feel about when you're building a deck and the optimal way to play the deck is to just make the generic extra deck monsters that every deck makes, even if it's at the expense of the actual named theme of your deck? How do you feel about it? Do you guys think that's good? Do you think it's bad? Am I just whining for no good reason? Okay, so let me know what you feel about it down in the comments. And of course, drop a like on the video, subscribe to APS Plus, because I have plenty of these sorts of things. I love talking about this stuff. That's going to be it. I'll see you guys in the next one. Fast turn.